Math Man. Today we're talking about integers. These are whole numbers, positive and negative, and including zero. Today we're going to learn how to add and subtract those integers, and next time we're going to learn how to multiply and divide them. But for now, addition and subtraction. So let's get to the board.
Hello students, now that we're at the board, let's go over integers, adding and subtracting. Well, an integer is a whole number that is not a fraction. It may be positive or negative. For example, we have positive integers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 20, 50, 78, 135, but numbers can also be negative. So we have negative integers, negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 500, negative 1000. So you get the picture. So numbers are integers if they're a whole number, and they can be positive or negative. But it's important to remember that 0 is also an integer, but is neither positive nor negative. The next terminology is a number line. Now you may have seen these before. A number line is a line on which the numbers are marked at intervals and is used to illustrate simple numerical operations. For example, this number line right here. 0 typically would be right in the middle because 0 is neither positive nor negative. The positive numbers go to the right, the negative numbers go to the left. Now we can use a number line to figure out these simple addition and subtraction problems with integers. We could just move from one number on the number line to another. But first, let's look at some special rules. Rule number 1. When you add a negative, it's just like subtracting a positive. For example, if you have 4 plus negative 7, adding that negative is just like subtracting the positive. So we can instead write 4 minus 7 equals negative 3. Rule number 2. Subtracting a negative is the same as adding a positive. So for example, if we had 4 minus negative 7, that's the same as saying 4 plus 7 because those two negatives become a positive. So 4 plus 7, as you know, is 11. Now there are 4 cases for addition or subtraction of integers. Let's look at each one individually. These are the 4 cases. Case 1, you have a positive number plus another positive number. And that number is going to continue getting further from 0, and it will remain positive. Case number 2, you have a positive number that you're going to add a negative to, which is like subtracting. So it could get back to 0 or even farther, putting it into the negative. Case number 3, you have a negative number that you're adding another negative number to. And if you add negative to negative, you're going to get more negative, right? So it's going to be further into the negative, and it will definitely be a negative number, farther from 0. And case number 4, you start with a negative number, and you add a positive number, which means you're adding positivity to negativity, so it's going to be getting closer to 0, or could even get into the positive depending on the number. So let's look at a problem from case number 1. In this case, remember, both numbers are going to be positive. So if you add 2 integers that are both positive, the numbers are going to be added like normal. You're going to get farther from 0, and the number will stay positive. So, an example, 5 plus 6, you should all know this, it is 11, correct. And then 4 plus 15 would be, you got it, 19. So let's look at this on the number line so we get an idea of how the number line works and how we can use it to solve problems. First, we start with our number. We got 5 plus 6 equals 11. So we'll start with the 5 on the number line. Since it's a positive 5, we're to the right of the 0. And from there, we're going to add 6. So if we're adding, we're going to go to the right because that's the positive direction. So from 5, we're going to go to 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. That was 6 steps to the right, so the answer would be 11. Let's look at one from case number 2. Different signs. So one is positive and one is negative. If you add 2 integers that are different signs, you start with the positive number, in this case, and then move back towards the 0 because you're adding the negative. And the number, depending on how big that number is, can turn that result into a negative. Let's look at an example. 5 plus negative 6. Remember, we said if you add a negative, it's like you're subtracting. So we can change that to 5 minus 6, which would be negative 1. Because if we had 5 minus 5, that would take us right back to 0, wouldn't it? But we have to go one more because we're subtracting 6. So it takes us to negative 1. Let's look at it on the number line. Again, we're going to start with our positive 5 right here on the number line. And then we're going to go negative 6. So we have to go to the left because that's where the negative numbers are. So from 5, we go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. And where we're at is negative 1. Now let's look at case number 3. We have the same sign, but in this case, they're both negative. If you add two integers that are both negative, ignore the negative sign for just a moment and add the numbers like usual. Then you're going to replace the sign and make it negative. The number gets farther from 0 and is going to remain negative. Remember that. So for an example, negative 6 plus negative 10, we're going to change it to 6 plus 10. We're going to add the numbers anyway without the negative sign. Then that equals 16. It's always important to put the negative sign back in, students. So our answer will be negative 16. Let's look at a similar example on the number line. Negative 5 plus negative 6 equals negative 11. So let's walk through this. We're going to start with our first number, which is negative 5, right there to the left of 0 because negative numbers go to the left. And from there, we're going to be adding, but we're adding a negative. So it's just like subtracting, which means we're going to the left. So from negative 5, we're going to go 6 steps to the left, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. And that takes us right to our answer, which is negative 11. Now let's look at an example from case number 4. In this case, we have different signs, first one negative and then one positive. When adding integers with different signs, plus and minus, starting with the negative this time, we move back towards 0 because we're adding a positive number, which means we're going to be getting closer to 0 and balancing out that negative number. And depending on that positive number, if it's bigger than the negative, it's going to be positive. So let's look at an example. We have negative 6 plus 10, which would be 4. Or we can rewrite and say negative 6 plus 10. We're going to move these around, put the bigger number first. Sometimes in these problems, this does help. So if we were to do that, we would instead write 10 minus 6 by switching the signs of the plus sign and the negative sign. And we'd have 10 minus 6 equals 4. Either way you look at it, the answer is correct. So let's look at it on the number line. Negative 5 plus 6 equals 1. So again, we'll start with negative 5, which is to the left of 0. And then we're going to move positive 6, go to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And it takes us to our correct answer of 1. And now, it's question time! It's time to solve some integer problems. Let's take a look at it. First, we have 7 plus negative 7. Since 7 and negative 7 are complete opposites and the same distance from 0, they would balance out and give us 0. Next, negative 8 minus 3. So since we have a negative subtracting a positive, that's going to go farther from 0. So we have negative 8 minus 3 would give us negative 11. Next, 8 plus negative 6. Since we're adding a negative, it's just like subtraction. So we could rewrite this as 8 minus 6, which would give us 2. Next, we have 5 minus negative 4. When you subtract a negative, it's just like adding a positive. We switch the signs. So this could be rewritten as 5 plus 4, which will give us 9. Next, 10 plus negative 2. Since we're adding a negative, remember that's just like subtraction, so we could rewrite this as 10 minus 2, which would give us 8. And we have negative 7 plus negative 7. Since we have a negative and we're adding another negative, it's going to get farther from 0, it's going to stay negative, and we add the numbers like normal. Negative 7 plus negative 7 would be negative 14. And now here's some for you to try on your own. Feel free to pause the video at any point so you can have more time if you need it to solve the problem. I'll give you some music to work by. Here you go.
that wraps up this lesson, students. Now that you've learned how to add and subtract integers, your life should be a lot easier. On our next video, we'll be looking at multiplying and dividing those integers. So, in the meantime, make sure that you like the video, subscribe to see more content, and leave a comment down in the comments below on any future videos you'd like help with. See you next time.